The Chinese sorcery scare took place in the 18th century within the Qianlong Empire. This can be compared to the Salem witch trials in America during the late 17th century. During this time in China, many people were accused of sorcery, which created a huge conflict within the region and ultimately resulted in imprisonments and deaths of innocent people. It was hard to govern these accusations of sorcery, as there were no laws ever created against these specific issues. In retrospect, this was not necessarily a fear of sorcerers roaming the land, but it was a fear of the unknown. The magistrates, the clergy, and the citizens of the region had no idea what to expect and how to deal with a situation like this, which caused widespread distress to cover the region. The harsh penalties and fear linked with the accusation of being a sorcerer ultimately exemplified with the events surrounding Beggar Chi, Peasant Shen, and Herbalist Mo, who were all accused of sorcery and penalized cruelly.
Peasant Shen was a man accused of sorcery. Peasant Shen gave the masons, who were similar to carpenters, a piece of paper with the names of his stepsons on it. With that, he wanted the masons to hammer in those names onto the top of the wood piling that they were working with. Peasant Shen was not fond of his stepsons and believed that by having their names nailed to the top of the wood pile, it would bring them bad luck. The masons reported him to the magistrates, and he was then arrested and beaten 25 strokes. This is looked at as Peasant Shen practicing sorcery. He is openly giving the supernatural the power to hurt his sons. Unlike the witch trials in America, the magistrates did not know what to do in this situation. At this point in time, China had a secular society and there were no laws dealing with the acts of sorcery. In America, it was much different during the early colonial setting than it was in China at this time, because the magistrates believed that they had the right to sentence people accused of witchcraft to death.
Chi Chao Mei, the beggar who had desperately accused Mason Wu of soul stealing in an attempt to prevent his own lynching, was quickly exposed as a liar once he was hauled before the town magistrates. Unable to pick out Wu from the lineup, he eventually admitted to having invented his entire story. But any hope that this confession might damp down the rising panic was more than offset by news of yet another case. This one from across the river of Haocheng County, where two wandering monks with unfamiliar accents came to the local boy and unwisely asked his name. Convinced that the strangers were soul stealers, a mob chased the monks out of the village, howling, "Burn them and drown them," as they ran. The village headman was able to calm things down only by having both men seized, together with two of their traveling companions. All four were sent to the local yamen where the bags were searched. One, a novice named Chu Cheng, was found to be carrying 3 pairs of scissors and a piece of braided sheet. That was enough for the magistrates, so they put the monks into torture.
Torture was a common feature of Chinese law in those days. Several different devices were used. The two most common were the light crusher and the ankle press. The latter, which was apparently the implement used on the wandering monks, was described by one Western witness as a sort of double wooden vise, consisting of 3 beams. Chokes were hammered in, causing 2 to act as levers on the third, inflicting agonizing multiple features on the ankle and shin bone. Hardly surprising, the press quickly wrung full confessions from the miserable monks, and the unease that this news produced was impaired by a separate incident in which a tinker who had been carried 2 entirely conventional written charms was killed by the members of an illiterate mob who assumed that he too was a soul stealer. Herbalist Mo was a 35-year-old man who made potions to remedy people's problems. Herbalist Mo, trying to gain some fame, decided that he was going to try to trick Mason Ku into hammering papers with people's names into bridge pilings, which was thought to be soul stealing. Mason Ku conned Herbalist Mo's plan and then turned Herbalist Mo into the local authorities, where Herbalist Mo was beaten and then exposed in a cage in Hangzhou City.